Homeless man returns, finds a lost wallet, and decides to return it. When he finds out who the owner was, he can't hold back his tears. Ethan Harper, a homeless man in his late 30s, sat on a worn bench in Riverside Park, his thin frame huddled against the brisk autumn wind. His clothes were layered and mismatched, a testament to the years he'd spent living on the streets. Despite his dire circumstances, Ethan had a quiet dignity about him. His eyes, a striking shade of green, still held a flicker of hope. On that particular morning, the city hummed around him. Commuters rushed by, their faces buried in scarves, hands clutching takeaway coffee cups. Ethan watched as they passed, occasionally offering a polite "good morning," though few responded. As he prepared to leave the park in search of a warm shelter, his attention was caught by a small, leather wallet lying just a few feet away on the pathway. It was sleek and well-crafted, clearly belonging to someone with wealth. Instinctively, Ethan picked it up, turning it over in his hands. Opening it, he found a driver's license, several credit cards, and a stack of crisp bills. The name on the ID read Jonathan Radcliffe. The face that accompanied the name was familiar. Jonathan was one of the city's most successful real estate moguls, a man whose face adorned billboards advertising luxury apartments. Ethan's breath caught. For a moment, the weight of temptation pressed on him. The money inside could feed him for weeks, even months if spent wisely. But the thought of using it felt wrong. Ethan's mother had always told him, "The choices we make when no one is looking define who we are." Resolute, he decided to return the wallet. Tucking it carefully into his pocket, he made his way to the nearest library to search for an address or contact information. The internet, a rare luxury in his life, provided the details he needed. Jonathan Radcliffe's office was in a high-rise building on Madison Avenue. Hours later, Ethan found himself standing at the imposing entrance of Radcliffe Enterprises. The glass doors reflected his disheveled appearance, and for a moment, he hesitated. Would they even let him in? Gathering his courage, he pushed the door open and approached the reception desk. The receptionist, a poised woman in a tailored suit, looked up and blinked in surprise. "Can I help you?" "I found Mr. Radcliffe's wallet," Ethan said, pulling it out of his pocket. "I'm here to return it." Her skepticism was evident, but she nodded. "One moment, please." Picking up the phone, she made a call. A few minutes later, a man in his 50s appeared. It was Jonathan Radcliffe himself, his presence commanding and sharp. "You found my wallet?" he asked, studying Ethan. "Yes, sir. It was in Riverside Park," Ethan replied, handing it over. Jonathan opened it, confirming everything was intact. "I don't know what to say," he began, clearly moved. "Most people wouldn't have done this. I just thought it was the right thing to do," Ethan said simply. Jonathan's gaze softened. "What's your name?" "Ethan Harper." Jonathan studied him for a moment, then said, "Ethan, why don't you come upstairs? I'd like to talk to you." Ethan hesitated but eventually agreed, following Jonathan to the upper floors of the building. The office was breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Jonathan gestured for Ethan to sit. "Tell me," Jonathan began, "what's your story?" Ethan shared his tale of hardship, how he lost his job after his father's prolonged illness drained their savings, how a string of bad luck had left him on the streets. He didn't embellish or seek pity. He simply spoke his truth. Jonathan listened intently. When Ethan finished, he leaned back in his chair, visibly moved. "You remind me of someone," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "My younger brother. He was just like you, kind and selfless, even when life was cruel to him." Ethan remained silent, unsure of what to say. Jonathan stood abruptly. "Ethan, I owe you more than gratitude for returning my wallet. You've reminded me of something important." His voice trembled slightly. "Wait here." When Jonathan returned, he held a small envelope and a set of keys. "In this envelope is a check to help you get back on your feet. And these keys, they're to a studio apartment I own downtown. It's empty, and I want you to stay there until you can stand on your own." Ethan was stunned. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Jonathan insisted. "You've earned it," Not just by your actions today, but by the integrity you've shown in your life. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the envelope and keys. Thank you, he whispered. That night, Ethan stood in his new apartment, overwhelmed by gratitude. The space was small but warm, with a bed, a kitchenette, and a view of the city skyline. For the first time in years, he felt hope take root. As he settled in, a knock came at the door. Opening it, Ethan was shocked to see Jonathan standing there, holding a framed photograph. "This was my brother," Jonathan said, handing it to him. The resemblance was uncanny. Ethan stared at the photo, his tears falling freely. I think I was meant to find your wallet," he said, his voice trembling. Jonathan smiled. "Maybe you were." Ethan woke up in the unfamiliar warmth of a real bed, sunlight streaming through the sheer curtains. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. The soft mattress beneath him and the quiet hum of the city far removed from the cold bench he'd grown accustomed to. But as he glanced at the set of keys on the bedside table, reality settled in. This was his new beginning. The studio apartment was small but cozy, with clean white walls and modest furnishings. Ethan's gaze fell on the framed photo Jonathan had given him the previous evening. The young man in the photo, Jonathan's brother, had a striking resemblance to himself. The shared name only deepened the uncanny connection. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. Later that day, Jonathan called. "Ethan, how are you settling in?" "Better than I could have hoped for," Ethan replied honestly. "I don't even know how to thank you." "You already did," Jonathan said. "Now I want to help you take the next step. Are you ready to start working?" "Yes," Ethan said without hesitation. "Good. I own several properties in the city. There's a position open as a maintenance assistant in one of the buildings. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and it comes with health benefits." "That sounds perfect," Ethan said, gratitude flooding his voice. "Great. I'll send someone to pick you up tomorrow morning." The next morning, Ethan found himself at the Radcliffe Tower, a historic building in the heart of the city. Its red brick facade stood proudly amidst modern skyscrapers, a symbol of a bygone era. The property manager, a stern but fair woman named Linda, gave Ethan a tour of the building and outlined his responsibilities. "Your job is straightforward," she said. "Keep the building in shape, repairs, cleaning common areas, making sure the tenants are happy. Think you can handle it?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said, eager to prove himself. The tenants were a mix of professionals, retirees, and young families. Ethan's first tasks were simple: fixing a leaking faucet, changing a flickering hallway light, and clearing debris from a storage area in the basement. It was in the basement that Ethan stumbled upon something curious: a dusty stack of boxes marked with Jonathan's family crest. Inside were old documents, photos, and personal belongings. Among them, Ethan found a leather-bound journal with the name Ethan Radcliffe embossed on the cover. Hesitating for only a moment, he opened it. The entries were fragmented, written in hurried, scrawled handwriting. They spoke of dreams unfulfilled, struggles with identity, and a longing to escape the shadow of an older sibling. July 12, 1998. Jonathan always knows what to say, how to act, how to succeed. But what about me? I feel like I'm drowning in expectations. Maybe it's better if I just disappear. The pain in the words resonated deeply with Ethan. His own life had been a series of unmet expectations, though his circumstances were vastly different. One entry, dated just weeks before Ethan Radcliffe's death, stood out. September 4th, 1998. I dreamt of starting over, of being free from it all. Maybe in another life, I could be the person I was meant to be. That evening, Ethan sat on the floor of his apartment, the journal in his hands. His heart ached for a man he'd never met, a man who shared his name and perhaps even some of his struggles. When Jonathan called to check in, Ethan hesitated before bringing up the journal. "I found something today. Your brother's journal." There was a long pause on the other end. "I thought I lost that years ago," Jonathan said quietly. "I didn't mean to pry, but..." He wrote about wanting to start over, about feeling lost, Jonathan's voice cracked slightly as he responded. Ethan was different, sensitive. I always wanted to help him, but I think I pushed too hard, tried to mold him into someone he wasn't. When he died, I couldn't forgive myself. You couldn't have known, Ethan said gently. Sometimes people hide their pain too well. Jonathan sighed. Maybe, but finding you, it feels like a second chance. Like I can do something right this time. Part 3/10. The ripple effect. Ethan couldn't shake the words from the note. To the Ethan who finds this, may your journey lead you where mine could not. It was as if Ethan Radcliffe had left a message just for him, bridging a gap between lives separated by decades. Questions swirled in his mind. Was he meant to find this? Was this a coincidence? Or something more profound? The following days at the Radcliffe Tower brought Ethan a sense of routine. The job was demanding, but the physical labor gave him clarity. He found small joys in the work, fixing things, restoring order. Tenants began to notice his dedication, offering kind words and occasional coffee cups left on his workbench. Among the residents, a widowed retiree named Mrs. Beatrice Lane stood out. She was a sharp, witty woman with a keen eye for people's souls. "You've got a kind heart, young man," she said one afternoon as Ethan fixed her squeaky cabinet door. "Not many would have taken the hard road you've walked. I can see it in your eyes. You've known struggle." Ethan smiled faintly. "Struggle teaches you a lot. Mostly about what you don't want to become." Her wrinkled face softened. "That's wisdom, not struggle." Speaking. One evening, after a particularly long day, Ethan received an unexpected visit. Jonathan had stopped by the tower, his usual composed demeanor tinged with hesitation. "I wanted to see how you were doing," Jonathan said, stepping into the maintenance office. Ethan offered him a chair. "Better than I have in years," he admitted. I think I'm finally finding my place." Jonathan nodded. "That's good. But I've been thinking about what you said, the note in Ethan's journal. I can't get it out of my head." "I haven't either," Ethan replied. "It feels intentional, like he knew someone would find it." Jonathan leaned forward, his expression pensive. "I've always believed we leave ripples behind. Actions, words, they carry farther than we ever imagine. Maybe this is one of his ripples, reaching you." Ethan hesitated, then said, "Do you believe in second chances?" Jonathan's gaze grew distant. "I think I have to. Otherwise, what's all this for?" That night, Ethan returned to the journal, poring over its pages for any clues about the man who had written them. One passage caught his attention. August 15th, 1998. "There's a place I go when the world is too loud. A hidden spot in the city where it feels like time stops. If I ever get lost, that's where I'll find myself again." The description was vague, but Ethan felt compelled to find this place. The next day, during a break, he asked Mrs. Lane about quiet spots in the city. "There are plenty," she said, "but not all of them are hidden. Try the old bell tower near St. Vincent's Chapel. It's one of those places no one thinks to look anymore." Ethan thanked her and, after work, headed to the chapel. The bell tower was indeed tucked away, its once grand structure now weathered and overgrown with ivy. Climbing its narrow staircase, Ethan reached the top and gasped. The view was breathtaking. An open sky stretched above the city, its noise muted by the height. Sitting on a ledge was a carved inscription, "Let the world fall silent, so your heart can speak." Ethan sat there for hours, the city lights twinkling below. It was easy to imagine Ethan Radcliffe coming here, seeking solace. The connection felt palpable, as if he could almost hear the whispers of the past. When he finally descended the tower, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever this journey was, it wasn't just about finding himself. It was about honoring the paths of those who came before him. Ethan stared at the photograph in his trembling hands. The image of a younger Jonathan and Ethan Radcliffe exuded warmth and camaraderie, but the cryptic message on the back unsettled him. Find the truth and set it free. Who had left the photo, and why? His mind raced as he considered the possibilities. Was it someone from Jonathan's past? A tenant at the tower? Or was it something more intangible? a force guiding him toward answers he hadn't yet known to seek. He decided to call Jonathan. "Jonathan, I found something." Someone slipped a photo under my door. Jonathan's voice grew serious. "A photo? Of what?" "It's you and your brother. There's a message on the back. Find the truth and set it free. Does that mean anything to you?" A long silence followed before Jonathan spoke, his tone heavy. "Ethan, I think it's time we talked about what really happened to my brother." The next day, Jonathan invited Ethan to his private office, a space filled with books, awards, and family photos. Jonathan sat behind his mahogany desk, his usual confidence replaced with a palpable vulnerability. "My brother, Ethan, was complicated," he began. "He was brilliant, creative, empathetic, full of potential, but he always felt like he didn't belong. Our family was demanding, and I think he felt suffocated under the weight of expectations." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "The night he died, we argued. He wanted to leave the family business, start fresh somewhere else. I thought he was being reckless, that he was throwing away everything we'd worked for. I said things I regret. Harsh things." Ethan listened intently, his chest tightening with empathy. "I didn't realize how much he was hurting. Later that night, I got a call. They found his car by the river. He'd driven off the bridge." Jonathan's voice broke. "They said it was an accident, but I've always wondered if it was something more." The weight of Jonathan's confession hung heavily in the air. Ethan could see the pain etched in every line of his face, the guilt he'd carried for years. "I've spent my life trying to make up for it," Jonathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Building this empire, helping others. It's all been an attempt to fill the void he left behind." Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady. "Maybe this is your chance to heal. Whatever truth your brother wanted to share, maybe it's still out there." That evening, Ethan returned to the journal, combing through its pages for anything he might have missed. One entry stood out. August 20th, 1998. "There are things I've never told anyone. Secrets that weigh on me like anchors. I wrote them down once, locked them away. Maybe someday someone will find them. Maybe that's how I'll be heard." The words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Could Ethan Radcliffe have left behind something more? A letter, a message, a final testament? He thought of the photograph and the bell tower. Could these be part of a larger puzzle? The next day, Ethan returned to St. Vincent's Chapel. He climbed the bell tower again, this time examining every corner of the space. Behind a loose brick near the inscription, he discovered a small, weathered box. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Carefully, Ethan unfolded it to reveal a letter. "To whoever finds this, I don't know if my voice will ever reach the ones I love, but I need to try. There are truths I've hidden for fear of disappointing my family, of being seen as weak. But hiding them has only made the weight unbearable." The letter continued, detailing Ethan Radcliffe's struggles with mental health, his feelings of isolation, and his longing to break free from the expectations placed upon him. "Jonathan, if you ever read this, please know I never blamed you. You pushed me because you believed in me, and I couldn't bear to tell you how much I was struggling. I love you, and I hope one day you'll forgive yourself." Tears blurred Ethan's vision as he read the final lines. "To the one who carries my name, find your own path. Live the life I couldn't." Ethan descended the bell tower carefully, his mind racing. The discovery of Ethan Radcliffe's letter had left him overwhelmed with emotions. Sorrow for a life lost too soon, gratitude for the wisdom left behind, and a determination to honor the man's wishes. As he reached the street, the city's noise snapped him back to the present. He resolved to share the letter with Jonathan, but a lingering unease held him back. It wasn't just the contents of the letter. It was the feeling he'd had in the tower being watched. That evening, Jonathan visited Ethan's apartment. The businessman seemed more composed than during their last conversation, though a shadow still hung over his demeanor. Ethan handed him the letter without a word. Jonathan read it slowly, his expression shifting from curiosity to grief, then to something Ethan couldn't quite name. When he finished, He folded the letter carefully and held it in his lap. "I've spent 25 years trying to understand him," Jonathan said, his voice thick. "And now, here he is speaking to me from the past. He didn't blame me." "No, he didn't," Ethan replied. "But he wanted you to know what he couldn't say back then." Jonathan nodded, his eyes glistening. "This changes everything. I've been living as if I owed him a debt I could never repay. Maybe now I can let go of that guilt." Ethan hesitated. "There's something else," he said, recounting his experience in the tower and the mysterious figure he'd seen. Jonathan frowned. "A figure? Are you sure?" "I know it sounds strange," Ethan admitted, "but I can't shake the feeling that someone is following this. Watching us." Jonathan looked thoughtful. "I don't believe in coincidences, Ethan. Whoever or whatever left that photo and message wanted you to find the truth. Maybe they aren't done yet." The following day, Ethan returned to work at the Radcliffe Tower. Life at the building seemed unchanged, though his new perspective gave him a greater appreciation for the tenants and their lives. Mrs. Lane stopped him in the hallway. "You seem different today," she observed. "I found something I wasn't expecting," Ethan said vaguely. She tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "Be careful, young man. Digging up the past can uncover things you might not want to see." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's the only way to move forward." That night, Ethan sat in his apartment, rereading Ethan Radcliffe's letter. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. The journal, the letter, the photo all seemed like pieces of a larger puzzle. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. When he opened it, no one was there. Instead, an envelope lay on the floor. Inside was a single page, torn from a book, with a handwritten note scrawled across it. "The Radcliffe family legacy isn't what it seems. Look deeper." At the bottom of the page was an address. An old Radcliffe estate on the outskirts of the city, long abandoned. Ethan called Jonathan immediately. "I found another message. It has an address, an old Radcliffe property. Do you know anything about it?" Jonathan was silent for a moment. "Yes, it was our summer house when we were kids. My parents sold it after Ethan died. I haven't been back since." "Then it's where we need to go," Ethan said. Jonathan hesitated. "Are you sure about this? Some things are better left buried." "I think your brother wanted us to find this," Ethan said firmly. "Whatever's there, it's part of the truth he wanted to set free." The air around the Radcliffe summer house was heavy with the scent of decay and nostalgia. Jonathan hesitated on the overgrown pathway, his hands buried in his coat pockets as he gazed at the dilapidated structure. Ethan could see the hesitation in his eyes. "We don't have to do this if you're not ready," Ethan offered. Jonathan shook his head. "No, it's time. Let's go." The front door swung open with an eerie groan as they stepped inside. Dust floated in the beams of sunlight that pierced through cracks in the boarded-up windows. The air was stale, the silence oppressive. "Everything looks smaller than I remember," Jonathan said, his voice echoing faintly. The main hall was lined with faded portraits of Radcliffe ancestors, their stern faces seemingly watching as the pair ventured deeper into the house. A grand staircase dominated the center of the space, its banister chipped and warped with age. The search began systematically. Room by room, they combed through the remains of the past. Broken furniture, forgotten trinkets, and scattered papers filled the spaces, but nothing seemed significant. In what used to be the library, Jonathan paused before a bookshelf. This was his favorite room, he said softly. He'd sit here for hours, reading anything he could get his hands on. Ethan ran his fingers along the dusty spines of the books. One caught his eye. It was slightly askew, its binding newer than the others. When he pulled it, the shelf shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small metal box. Jonathan took a shaky breath as Ethan placed the box on a nearby table and opened it. Inside were several items. A photograph of Ethan Radcliffe as a boy, smiling in front of the summer house. A worn wristwatch, its hands frozen in time. A bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. Jonathan untied the ribbon with trembling hands and began reading. The letters were addressed to him, written in Ethan Radcliffe's familiar handwriting. Dear Jonathan, if you're reading this, it means you've finally found me. I wish I could have said these things to you in person, but I never had the courage. You were always so strong, so certain of yourself, and I felt like I could never measure up. But it wasn't your fault, it was mine. I let fear and doubt consume me. The letters went on to detail Ethan's struggles, his feelings of being overshadowed, and his dreams of forging his own path. There's something you need to know, something I couldn't tell you before. Our family, it wasn't as perfect as it seemed. I found documents, papers that explain things I never understood as a child. If you want the whole truth, look beneath the floorboards in Father's study. Jonathan's face turned pale. The study, he murmured. It's at the back of the house. Together, they made their way to the room. Unlike the rest of the house, the study seemed relatively untouched. The furniture was intact, though draped in cobwebs. The large oak desk stood in the center, its surface cluttered with yellowed papers and an old inkwell. Ethan knelt on the floor, feeling along the edges of the floorboards. In one corner, he found a loose plank. With Jonathan's help, he pried it open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside were stacks of documents tied with twine. Jonathan picked up the first bundle, his eyes widening as he scanned the pages. These are financial records, donations to political campaigns, offshore accounts. His voice faltered. This isn't just business. These are bribes, cover-ups. Ethan's brow furrowed. Your father? Jonathan nodded grimly. He always prided himself on the family's reputation, on being a pillar of the community. But this could ruin everything he stood for. Among the papers was a final note, written in Ethan Radcliffe's handwriting. Jonathan, I found these after Father died. I didn't know what to do. I thought about destroying them, but I couldn't. The truth is ugly, but it's still the truth. Do what you think is right. I trust you. Jonathan sank into a chair, the weight of the revelations pressing down on him. All this time, I thought I was honoring his memory by protecting the Radcliffe name. But he wanted me to expose the truth. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe that's the redemption he was looking for. For both of you. Jonathan looked up, determination hardening his features. You're right. It's time to set it free. Ethan traced his fingers over the symbol carved into the underside of the desk. It was a swirling, intricate design that seemed out of place amidst the study's otherwise traditional decor. I've seen this before, he murmured, recalling the same mark faintly etched into the letter he had found in the bell tower. Jonathan leaned in for a closer look. It's not familiar to me. Could it have been something my brother left behind? Maybe, Ethan replied, though the symbol seemed too deliberate to be a mere doodle. It felt significant, a clue pointing to something deeper. Let's take a photograph of it, Jonathan suggested. We can research it later. Ethan nodded, but an unsettling feeling crept over him. As they packed the documents and the metal box, the house seemed to grow colder, its silence heavier. Back at Ethan's apartment, they spread the contents of the hidden compartment across the table. Jonathan sifted through the documents while Ethan examined the photograph of the symbol. We should focus on two things, Ethan said. First, what to do with these documents. Second, figuring out what this symbol means. Jonathan nodded. Exposing these records could damage the reputation of Radcliffe Enterprises, but it could also bring justice to people who were wronged by our father's dealings. Then it's worth the risk, Ethan said firmly. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone, the image of the symbol still fresh in his mind. He pulled out Ethan Radcliffe's journal, flipping through its pages. Near the end, he noticed a small sketch, nearly invisible against the worn paper. The same symbol. Beneath it, a single phrase was written. The place where it all began. Ethan's heart quickened. What had begun and where? The next morning, Ethan shared his discovery with Jonathan. The place where it all began, Jonathan repeated, pacing the room. He could have meant so many things. The house, the tower, even our childhood home. I don't think it's literal, Ethan said. It feels like he's pointing us towards something tied to the symbol. Something bigger. Jonathan stopped pacing, his expression clouded. There was one place Ethan always mentioned when we were kids. Park near our first home. He called it his secret garden. Maybe that's what he meant. The park, nestled on the outskirts of the city, was overgrown and neglected. Vines strangled rusted swings, and wildflowers sprouted in what had once been a well-tended garden. Jonathan and Ethan wandered through the park, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. This was his favorite spot, Jonathan said, stopping near an old gazebo. He'd sit here for hours, sketching or writing. Ethan examined the gazebo, noting its faded wood and peeling paint. Beneath one of the benches, he found something etched into the wood. The same swirling symbol. "This has to be it," Ethan said. Jonathan joined him, crouching to inspect the mark. If this was his secret garden, he might have hidden something here. They searched the gazebo and the surrounding area. Beneath a loose stone, they found a small metal cylinder. Inside was a roll of paper. Jonathan carefully unrolled it, revealing a map of the city. The map was marked with several locations, each indicated by the swirling symbol. "These places, they're all connected to our family," Jonathan said, pointing to the sites. "What do they mean?" Ethan asked. "I don't know," Jonathan admitted. "But if my brother went to this much trouble to mark them, they must be important." The figure's abrupt departure left Ethan and Jonathan shaken. For a long moment, they stood frozen in the shadow of the old gazebo, the mysterious map clenched in Jonathan's hands. "Who was that?" Ethan whispered, his voice tinged with unease. Jonathan scanned the park, his expression dark. "I don't know, but someone knows we're looking for answers, and they're watching us." Ethan's grip tightened on the map. "Then we don't stop. Whatever your brother left behind, someone doesn't want us to find it." The next step was clear. They had to investigate the locations marked on the map. After a night of restless sleep, Ethan and Jonathan set out early the following morning. The first location was a disused factory on the city's outskirts. The building loomed over the pair like a forgotten giant, its windows shattered and its walls scrawled with graffiti. "This used to be one of my father's properties," Jonathan explained as they made their way inside. The factory's interior was a maze of rusted machinery and crumbling walls. It seemed devoid of clues until Ethan noticed a pattern scratched into the floor near the back. The swirling symbol. "Here," he called. Jonathan crouched beside him. Beneath the symbol, they found a hidden compartment. Inside was an envelope containing a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed a group of men, including Jonathan and Ethan's father. The note read, "The truth hides in plain sight. Trust only those who seek it." The second location was an old theater downtown. Once a beacon of art and culture, it now stood abandoned, its grand marquee covered in grime. As they explored the stage and dressing rooms, Ethan noticed another faint carving of the swirling symbol, this time on the back of a broken mirror. Behind the mirror was a small box containing several keys and a cryptic set of coordinates. "What are these for?" Ethan asked, holding up the keys. Jonathan examined them closely. "I recognize these, they're for safety deposit boxes. My father used them to store important documents." Ethan frowned. "So the next clue might not be a place. Could be whatever's in those boxes." Returning to the city, they visited the bank listed on the coordinates. After some paperwork and security checks, they accessed a deposit box under Jonathan's father's name. Inside was a ledger filled with detailed records of payments, transactions, and connections to powerful figures across the city. Jonathan's face hardened as he flipped through the pages. This is a record of everything. Bribes, kickbacks, illegal deals. If this got out, it could bring down some of the most influential people in the city." Ethan placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "This is what your brother wanted you to find." He knew the truth was bigger than just your family. As they left the bank, the weight of their discovery was heavy. But the shadows that had followed them weren't far behind. That evening, back at Ethan's apartment, they laid out everything they had found. The map, the photograph, the letters, and the ledger. Each piece seemed connected, yet the picture was still incomplete. Ethan stared at the ledger. "If we're going to expose this, we need to be careful. Whoever's been following us isn't going to let this go without a fight." Jonathan nodded grimly. We'll need help. I know a journalist, someone I can trust. She'll know how to handle this. Ethan stared at the cryptic message on his phone, his resolve hardening. Whoever was trying to stop them had underestimated his determination. Jonathan. Someone just sent me a warning to back off. Jonathan frowned. They're getting desperate. That means we're close. Deciding not to be deterred, they pressed forward with their plan to involve the journalist Jonathan trusted, a woman named Catherine Doyle. A seasoned investigative reporter with a reputation for fearlessness, Catherine had spent years exposing corruption in the city's elite. When they met her at a discreet cafe the following morning, Catherine listened carefully as Jonathan explained their findings. This ledger alone could make waves, she said, flipping through the pages. But if we want real accountability, we need to link these records to current actions and individuals. This is only part of the picture. Jonathan nodded. There's more, Catherine. My brother left clues pointing us to hidden truths about our father's dealings. We've followed them this far, but we're still piecing it all together. Ethan added, we found marked locations on a map he left, and each one has revealed something significant. There might be more we haven't uncovered yet. Catherine's sharp eyes lit up with interest. Then let's keep digging. But we'll need to move carefully. If someone's already threatening you, it's because you're stepping on powerful toes. Their next move was to visit the remaining locations on the map, hoping to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle. The third site was an old chapel on the outskirts of the city, its once vibrant stained glass windows now faded and cracked. Inside, they found a small altar with the swirling symbol carved into its side. Beneath it was another hidden compartment containing a stack of letters. The letters were correspondence between Jonathan's father and a network of business associates, detailing plans to manipulate markets, exploit vulnerable communities, and silence dissent. This is it, Catherine said, scanning the documents. This ties the ledger to a larger conspiracy. With this, we can prove intent and collaboration. The final location on the map was a derelict warehouse near the waterfront. The air was damp, and the structure groaned under its own weight as they navigated through it. Amidst the debris, they discovered a sealed safe buried beneath a collapsed section of flooring. It took effort and tools to pry it open, but inside was an object that made Jonathan freeze. An ornate locket. Ethan noticed Jonathan's reaction. What is it? Jonathan opened the locket to reveal two photographs, one of himself and the other of his brother. This was Ethan's. He always wore it when we were kids. Inside the locket was also a small, folded note. The truth will cost you, but lies cost more. Use this wisely. Returning to Catherine's office, the trio pieced together their findings. The full scope of the conspiracy became clear. A web of corruption spanning decades, orchestrated by Jonathan's father and his associates to maintain power and control at any cost. We have enough here to publish a bombshell story, Catherine said, but we'll need to verify everything to make it airtight. Jonathan exhaled deeply. This will destroy my father's legacy. It'll bring down powerful people, but it'll also honor my brother's memory. Ethan placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. It's the right thing to do. Ethan wanted this truth to come out. You're giving him the voice he never had. Over the next week, Catherine worked tirelessly to corroborate the evidence. Ethan and Jonathan stayed vigilant, knowing the risks of retaliation. The anonymous threats continued, but they refused to back down. When Catherine's story finally went live, it was explosive. News outlets picked up the revelations, and the city was rocked by the scandal. Several prominent figures were forced to resign, and investigations into criminal charges began. In the aftermath, Jonathan stood on the balcony of his office, looking out over the city. Ethan joined him, the air between them filled with quiet reflection. I feel like I can finally breathe, Jonathan said. Like a weight has been lifted. Ethan nodded. Your brother would be proud of you. You gave his truth the justice it deserved. Jonathan turned to Ethan, a rare smile softening his features. And you, Ethan, you gave me the courage to face this. I don't think I would have done it without you. Ethan smiled back. Sometimes, we just need someone to remind us what we're capable of. As they stood in the fading light, The city below seemed to pulse with a renewed sense of possibility, as if the truth they'd uncovered had begun to cleanse not just the Radcliffe name, but the world around them. The weeks following the publication of Catherine's story were a whirlwind of consequences and reflection. Investigations into the corruption exposed by the Radcliffe Ledger swept through the city, bringing long overdue accountability to those who had thrived on deceit. Jonathan faced questions from every corner. Journalists, board members, and the public demanded to know how much he had known and whether he was complicit. He met the scrutiny head-on, holding a press conference where he revealed the full story of his father's misdeeds. "This is not the legacy I wish to leave," he said. "Today we turn a new page. Transparency, accountability, and justice will define Radcliffe Enterprises moving forward." His honesty won him cautious respect, but it was clear his road to rebuilding trust would be long. For Ethan, life had also changed. His work at the Radcliffe Tower became a source of pride, as tenants and colleagues noticed his dedication and resilience. The story had brought him a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed, and with it came a new confidence. One day, as he repaired a window in the building, Mrs. Lane approached him with her characteristic warmth. "I read the papers," she said. "You and Mr. Radcliffe did something extraordinary." Ethan smiled. "I was just following where the path led," Mrs. Lane chuckled. "And sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. A little courage to keep walking." Jonathan and Ethan's friendship deepened in the aftermath of their shared journey. Jonathan offered Ethan a permanent position at Radcliffe Enterprises, but Ethan declined. "I think I've found where I belong," he said, gesturing to the Radcliffe Tower. "I've spent too much time trying to survive. Now I want to live, and I want to help others do the same." Jonathan nodded. "Then I'll make sure you have the support you need. And if you ever change your mind, the offer stands." On a crisp autumn morning, Jonathan invited Ethan to visit the old summer house one last time. As they walked through the now abandoned property, Jonathan carried a small box containing his brother's journal, letters, and the locket. "I've decided to let this place go," Jonathan said. "It holds too many memories, but it's time to let the past rest." Ethan watched as Jonathan placed the box beneath a tree on the property, covering it gently with soil. "Why leave it here?" Ethan asked. Jonathan smiled faintly. "Because this is where it all began, and where it should stay." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the past finally easing. In the months that followed, Ethan and Jonathan stayed in touch, their bond forged through shared struggle and triumph. The Radcliffe name slowly began to rebuild, not as a symbol of wealth and power, but as one of integrity and change. For Ethan, the journey had been transformative. What began as an act of honesty, returning a stranger's wallet, had led him to find purpose, friendship, and a life he never thought possible. And though he would always carry the scars of his struggles, he walked forward with hope, knowing that even the smallest actions could ripple into something far greater. As the city thrived under the newfound light of truth, the legacy of Ethan Radcliffe lived on, not just in the actions of his brother and namesake, but in the quiet belief that the truth, no matter how painful, could always set us free. The end.